Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order.
I know I'm a pain in the ass.
I'm here right on time.
I know I'm a pain in the ass.
And the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Weil.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Huh? Okay. I'll ask the clerk to conduct a roll call, please.
Mr. Conover?
Here.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer? Here. Mr. Brumo?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Ms. Fraser? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Strauss? Mr. Wiles?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Ms. Heber? Here. Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Shepler? Here. Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Thomas?
Here. Motion to approve the minutes from the January 17th, 2020 board meeting, subject to correction by the clerk. Moved by Supervisor McGowan and seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any additions, corrections? All in favor? Aye. Okay, next we have a presentation of the Employee of the Month Award.
Good morning. This month's Employee of the Month is from Health Services, and without objection, I'd like to ask if Janelle could come up and make that presentation.
Good morning. Thank you all for the opportunity for department heads to provide recognition and appreciation for our employees that make our departments great. I'd also like to introduce Joanne Morton, who is our Employee of the Month's mother. She served our agency through her retirement as a supervising public health nurse. Today is your day to meet one of the county's best nurses, or should I say one of the best nurses in Warren County. Congratulations to Lisa Morton on a job well done, and thank you for the quality care that you provide our home care patients. Lisa has been a nurse with our home care agency for over 20 years. We are so fortunate to have her. She is a huge asset. She has an associate's degree in liberal arts and nursing and a bachelor's degree in history. She is a seasoned home care nurse, very self-motivated, energetic, goal-oriented, and absolutely fun to work with. She always goes the extra mile, and I mean this, as she's actually one of our home care nurses that travels to see our patients in the North Country, so she does put the miles on the county car. She is dependable, and her case management skills and follow-through are excellent. She readily connects with her patients in a very non-judgmental way. She quickly establishes rapport, meeting patients where they are physically, socially, and emotionally. She is a special nurse that exemplifies the best, Florence Nightingale. When visiting a patient, nothing else matters. Lisa is there for her patients. Her patients trust her and look for her for reassurance. Without a second thought, she came back early from a vacation when a family member notified her that a family member was going to be dying. She was there to provide comfort and reassurance so he could pass peacefully. Lisa has a special way of empowering her patients. We get feedback through surveys, through phone calls, through letters, and one of the patients says that they were thanking Lisa for providing her with information that helped her through a scary illness, crediting Lisa for helping her to understand her illness and to be more confident. Another patient in his 90s wrote a very sincere letter for Lisa saying she had the remarkable capacity to restore his faith in the medical arts. He went on to say Lisa instills in her patients a high degree of optimism about the future and is very responsive to her patients' needs and psychological concerns. He continued to comment her cheerful attitude as she goes about her documentation that made him feel as that she was there for a social call rather than a medical mission of mercy. Now that I know you like to do documentation, Lisa is an essential member of our staff. Her experience, expertise, compassion, sense of humor are huge. She has also demonstrated leadership and the ability to rise above adversity to serve and advocate for our patients. She's talented, skilled, respected by others, and everyone respects her. It is always a comfort knowing Lisa is there serving our patients. She's positive, caring, compassionate, always ready for a challenge. She readily advocates for her patients in a gentle way and always makes them, all of them, feel like they are number one. Lisa, I thank you for doing a top-notch job and for the amazing job you do every day. And today is your day to be number one.
Okay, next item is the report of the chairman. On January 21st, 22nd, January 24th, and January 30th, I attended the committee meetings as they were scheduled. On January 24th, I sat on the Environmental Concerns and Real Property Tax Committee to make a quorum. January 27th, 28th, and 29th, I attended the NISAC conference. On the 27th, I sat on the Economic Development, Environmental Concerns, and Energy Committee with NISAC, and I attended 3 other seminars that day. The 28th, I attended the County Chief Executive meeting. The main concerns in that meeting were be sure to get your sales tax extenders in, which doesn't really apply to us, and Medicaid. And on January 29th, along with Supervisor Leggett, we attended the Tier 1 training for emergency management, and that lasted until about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. February 4th, I attended a special LDC meeting to deal with issues with Nettle Meadow and their move to Lake Luzerne. February 8th, I declared a state of emergency to facilitate warming shelters due to the massive power outages and below zero temperatures that were expected. On February 12th, I rescinded the state of emergency. So the emergency management training come in handy immediately. February 11th, I attended a special personnel and administration committee meeting. February 12th, I had a meeting with President Duffy and Anne Marie on their upcoming budget, their needs. Talked about changing the formula between the 2 county sponsors, and I asked her what we could do for her, and one thing she said was that we should encourage our young people to attend SUNY. That she doesn't think that enough of that goes on. So I would ask all of us to encourage any opportunity you have to encourage our young people to attend SUNY Adirondack. On February 13th and 18th, I attended department head evaluations, and on the 19th of February, I was at the Health Insurance Working Group for an in-depth review of our health insurance, and I'm glad to report that it's in very good shape at this point. And that concludes my report. Next item is a report of committee chairman on past month's meetings or activities. And we'll start with Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As chair of the Economic Growth and Development, Higher Education and Workforce Committee, there are no resolutions in front of you today, but that does not mean that there hasn't been a lot of activity. As part of the strategy that, or the request from our chairman to me and the committee to develop a strategy for economic development for the county, I've embarked on a listening tour, and I have met with a number of individuals throughout the county and continue to do that, I would imagine, for the next month or so, to kind of get a background in terms of what our needs are, what our successes have been, what some of the challenges we have, and what our wants and needs are. So, and along those lines, I did attend a conference in Albany, an economic development conference. There were over 200 individuals from across the state talking about economic development. Probably 2 or 3 things that came out of that, which was eye-opening to me, is that the whole state is concerned about workforce. Each of these economic development people were talking about how do they expand their workforce, how do they grow their workforce, how do they basically acquire people from different regions, different areas of the country, and attract these people so they can continue to grow. So the workforce is a major issue. The other thing that came across was that there's a lot of high-energy people that we're competing with in different areas across the state that are trying to do economic development and grow their workforce and grow the opportunities for their constituents in their counties. So we have some challenges in front of us, to say the least. And I think I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. There's a lot more going on, but right now, that's enough for today.
Thank you. Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to speak today for my my first seating of support services. I'm very happy and thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for selecting me for this position. The January 24th support services met, and the resolution we have was number 69. It was an update and a clarification from Julie Butler for our purchasing, which it really was more clarifying with a few updates, but all in a good move of moving forward. Her department is getting busier because we're getting more support from the municipalities, because they're figuring out that she's very good at getting the prices that we need. So thank you very much for that. Also on February 7th, we met for interviews for weights and measures, and kind of narrowing down the amount of people to be bringing. We'll be bringing that to personnel, I believe. That is Ryan.
That's right.
Okay, and then February 13th, I started with the evaluations of my department under Rachel, Supervisor Sievers. But at the start of the evaluation process that she started in her tenure before, and it really, Ryan, you really hit those evaluations. I was impressed. I didn't have a time to speak too much because you had everything under control, and I think it was a great evaluation process and very fair. So and thank you for that. So and that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today in front of you, you have resolutions 31 through 35 from the Criminal Justice Committee. Just to call your attention to 31, that's a minor change, just asking that any members of the assigned counsel panel are now members of the Warren County Board. And the The additional resolutions in front of you are all state funded. None of those are coming from a match from our county dollars. In addition to resolutions 31 through 35, at our Criminal Justice Committee meeting this month, we had a discussion on bail criminal justice reform, as our DA appropriately categorized that. We talked both about both the changes in the bail, but also more as important is the discovery obligations that our district attorney's office is also dealing with. And of course, we're looking at more of those unfunded mandates, and I think you'll hear more about that in the future in trying to meet the needs of this new change given the law on January 1st. On January 28th, we had our Criminal Justice Standing Committee meeting with NISAC. Both Supervisor Simpson and I are members, so I'll defer to you if you want to give that report. Okay. Well, just briefly, I mean, we had an opportunity to pass 3 resolutions. One of those resulted in creating a task force that Supervisor Kevin Garrity will hopefully be sitting on as chair of the EMS. Do I have that title right? EMS committee, the newly formed committee? Yeah. Okay. So that was very helpful to be able to have that information. We'll also be looking at a resolution in committee next week in support of some changes as well. Director Bob Busey from Probation did an outstanding job as one of the co-chairs that led these discussions and created those task forces. So I think it is important that you know his role at a state level and how impactful he has been. In addition to those meetings, I've had a chance to meet at length both with Bob Busey from Probation, Jason Carasone is our DA, and our assigned counsel, Joy LaFountain, and our new supervising attorney by contract as well, to talk a little bit about the changes and the demands that they're looking at going into this year, and just to get up to speed as a new chair of that committee. Lastly, Supervisor Beatty and I are both attending next week the National Association of Counties training. I've had the opportunity, and I've certainly appreciate it from the state level and the national level, to be appointed to the Resilient Counties Advisory Committee, as well as the steering committee for the National Association of Counties for Criminal Justice. So hopefully we'll be able to come back and report some information on that as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Beatty.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Facilities met on the 22nd. There's one resolution, Resolution 30. It's a basic resolution authorizing an extension agreement with Emergency Power Systems to provide generator maintenance service at our various facilities here in Warren County. I also attended the NISAC meeting on the 27th and 28th. I was glad to see a number of supervisors there. I think probably half of us attended, which was outstanding. Attended also that criminal justice meeting that Supervisor Sieber just mentioned. And let me just tell you what a find we have in Bob Busey. He was not only co-chair of that committee, and he is just an amazing talent that we've been able to keep here in Warren County. And I think a lot of times a lot of our department heads and employees go underappreciated at times, but he is definitely a real asset to the county. I also attended the emergency management meeting. I saw Supervisor Garrity there as well. There's some excellent information on how we can assist in trying to right the ship that's somewhat leaking, and the fact that we have holes in emergency management in different parts of our rural areas of the county. I also attended the bail reform meeting. I found it very interesting that the DA Soares, Albany DA Soares, was basically against this bail reform law. Now, he's a Democrat, and this isn't political. This is not Republican or Democrat. It's about safety. And he was, to me, he came across as being very explicit in thinking that this was a safety detriment, this new bail reform law. In fact, he kind of chuckled at some of the things that are going on in a sarcastic way. So that's something that's still hot and should be discussed not only at the county level, but obviously in Albany with our legislators. So that's it today. I will conclude and move it on to Ms. Shepler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for recognizing Mr. Uzi. He does a great job.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Shepler.
I have no report.
Okay. Supervisor Garrity, or budget officer?
No reports on the budget, other than we're waiting to see what the governor's budget will do to the counties, and then we'll make some decisions out of that. I also did attend the NISAC, the one-day meeting on EMS, and it is a concern around the state. And I'm going to start meeting with all the local emergency squads to see if we can't come up with a solution. It needs to be done, and hopefully everybody will understand that, and we get a good solution to the problem here in Warren County. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Works met on the 22nd, January 22nd, represented in your packet by Resolution 64 through 68. It's all very straightforward. Just to bring to your attention that Resolution 68 is to reject the proposed bid for the caboose and to leave it right where it's presently located in town of Thurman. And I just wanted to, I see Brian LaFleur in the audience, and I just wanted, Brian, to you, and I see Jim LaFar as well, to you and the law enforcement and our highway crews and our emergency responders. The response during the recent ice storm was just fabulous. There was a lot of communities affected across the Fort County area, as I heard, north of 115,000 people without power. That's a big deal anytime, but especially in the dead of winter. It's very, very cold out. It's a very dangerous situation. So to all of the people that responded to that emergency, our sincerest thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Safety Committee met on January 24th. Before you are 12 resolutions. Resolutions 52 through 63. 5 are from Office of Emergency Services. Out of those 5, 3 are for approval to apply for various grants in the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. 1 is to approve travel to a conference, and 1 is to approve an agreement with Glens Falls for the fire department for training and being first responders in hazardous waste and mass destruction incidents. 7 are from the Sheriff's Office. 5 of those 7 are for approval of various agreements. 3 relate to communications operations, 1 for medical services, and 1 for Marine Patrol. And 2 are for approval to apply for grants from New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. Also of note, there's some budget corrections on Resolution 28 for the Sheriff's Office for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, and also Resolution 29, there's budget amendments from the Sheriff's Office recognizing $635,000 in grant revenue and $53,000 in grant revenue from the Office of Emergency Services. I also attended the NISAC conference and got recertified on my Tier 1 emergency management training. And I also want to thank the Chairman for declaring that state of emergency several weeks ago. It made it possible to roll out measures there to accommodate our population without power during a very cold time. The Chestertown Fire Department set up warming through the day on Saturday. Pottersville Fire Department, with the help of Red Cross, thanks to the Red Cross volunteers, were able to set up a shelter for overnight on Saturday night. Also would like to reiterate Supervisor Conover's words for the Office of Emergency Services and the Sheriff's Office for their response during that time. They did an outstanding job, and it was quite precious point.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no reports today.
Thank you. Supervisor McDevitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably the highlight of the month, as far as I was concerned, is in some small way trying to maintain a small amount of jobs in Warren County, and that had to do with Nettle Meadow Goat Cheese, which is currently located in Thurman and will be moving to Lake Luzerne. We've had a couple of committee meetings in an effort to ensure a smooth transition, to see if Ed Bartholomew's office can help and ensure that those jobs are maintained here in Warren County and continue to provide you know, a comfortable and secure home for Warren County in those jobs. So that was probably the most important thing we did this month. And anytime we can maintain or create jobs in Warren County, that's what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you very much. Environmental concerns and real property met on January 24th, and there are 3 resolutions in your packet. Resolution 38, I would like to offer an amendment to that resolution at the appropriate time, Chairman. Also, I attended the NISAC conference in the end of January, and I was appointed by the president of NISAC to serve as the Resolutions Committee Chairwoman. So we did meet on Monday afternoon and passed all of the resolutions that were proposed by the various committees, as Supervisor Sieber had mentioned. And then the entire body adopted those all on Wednesday at the full body meeting. That was exciting. The Climate Smart Communities Task Force for Warren County met on February 3rd, and we are moving forward with some actions, although we did not receive any grant funding, so it's going to be a challenge figuring out what we can do without spending a whole lot of money. The Septic Inspection Working Group, working on the septic inspection law at transfer of property, met on February 4th, and we do have some members of the community. If anyone else is interested, please let me know. We're working through some technical issues that are posing some difficulties, but we want to try to iron that out and bring forward a good resolution or proposed law before we bring that back to committee. So a little bit more work to be done there. Also, I attended the railroad negotiating meeting on February 7th, and we ironed out the terms of that agreement, and the county attorney has given us a draft lease agreement that I believe we're going to look at passing today. And I know if Supervisor Hogan were here, she would say this, I'm going to say it for her, that she would very much appreciate the support of the board on that resolution. There was also a working group meeting of people interested in putting together some sort of county composting facility. We met just a few days ago, Wednesday it was, and there's a lot of work to be done there, but thank you, Superintendent Hages, for sending Todd there, your representative. So we're going to continue to look at that because reducing waste throughout the county is going to be important as we move forward with our Climate Smart initiative, as well as looking at things like the cost of sending our waste to incinerator and landfill. They're going to keep going up, so the less we can spend on that, the better. And finally, over the weekend, I attended the governor's announcement regarding tourism in the North Country and his announcement about the winter ad and funding for snowmobile trail maintenance, and Warren County was awarded some of that funding, so that was pretty great too. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. And congratulations on your appointment to the chairing the Resolutions Committee.
Thank you, Chair.
Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended all of the meetings of the committees to which I've been appointed. This was the first time I've attended any of those, and I attended a couple of others in addition to that. Excuse me. I found them all very informative. I'm learning a lot, and look forward to continuing in that vein. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Human Services Committee met for its first meeting. There are no resolutions coming out of that, with the exception of a budget amendment in the social services. I also appreciated the opportunity to participate in the department head evaluations, and in Andrea Hogan's absence, she asked me to do a report on Cornell Cooperative Extension, which this past week during school vacation has been conducting a series of programs for youth during school vacation week. 4-H public presentation training. The kids have been doing a variety of programs, all geared to teaching public speaking skills, something that I need to do better with. Anyone who's interested in becoming a judge for the public presentations, which will take place in upcoming weeks and during the month of March, contact Roxanne Westcott at 4881. Additionally, Cooperative Extension is going to be hosting a women's archery workshop at Dunham's Bay Fish and Game Club on March 15th from 1 to 5. Young women included, ages 8 and older can participate. Any youth 12 and under must be accompanied by an adult. There's a $15 fee for that class, and again, they can contact 668-488-81. And finally, the VITA Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program is in full swing. Cooperative Extension is still in need of volunteer appointment schedulers, and as the chairman said, as far as encouraging people to look at SUNY Adirondack, encourage your constituents and friends and neighbors to consider having their income taxes prepared by a trained volunteer from Cornell Cooperative Extension. I believe it's $57,000 is the threshold for participating in that program. Any household amount less than that to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance met on January 30th. As a result of that meeting, we have resolutions 28 and 29 and 80 through 90. They're pretty much self-explanatory. I just want to bring 84 to your attention, where we're establishing Budget Code A.917.00, assigned fund balance SUNY Adirondack operations for the purpose funding Warren County's share of SUNY Adirondack operating costs, and authorizing transfer of funds and amending Warren County budget for 2020. We've discussed that. Mr. Thomas brought that up when we were doing the budget of setting out, so just so you take a look at that one. And Treasurer Swan is here, and I'd like to ask him to kind of just bring us up to date with what's happening down here.
Good morning, everybody. As you've seen with the information we sent out, sales tax is up. That's good. Occupancy tax is up. I think it's up about 7%, which is very good. I'm always cautious when the sales tax figures are this high, because then there's usually an adjustment laid down the road that knocks it back down. So don't get too crazy about that. One of the big things that I would like to talk about is the bonds that we have been refinancing for the last several months for the Human Services building across the parking lot. This has turned out even better than we had hoped. The closing will be February 26th. I just signed most of the documents and the bonds this morning. The old bonds were at about 4%, and I say about because over the course of the year, some of those bonds will be at a little higher or a little lower percent each year that they're pushed out. The new ones, we were estimating that they would be at 1.74%. We're about 1.2%. We hit the market at the absolute perfect time. There was nobody else out there selling municipal bonds, and they jumped on us. We sold them all in about 20 minutes, which was a record. It went as good as I could imagine. So in dollar amounts, that means about $4.1 million we'll save over the course, and that averages out to about roughly $275,000 to $280,000 a year less for our debt payment. So that worked out very well for the county. I do want to talk about the, as a part of this, we had to go through a new ratings with Standard & Poor's for the bond rating. We ended up at the same rating that we were at before, AA stable, which I felt was where we probably would end up. One of the things that really surprised me during the ratings conference was they asked a tremendous amount of questions concerning the effect of the new bail reform law and Governor Cuomo's indication of doing something with Medicaid, Medicare reductions to the counties, and wanting to know if we had a plan for that. And that probably took up a good 30% of the conference calls that we had with them, which surprised me that they were that in tune to what the impact will be on the local government. So it was interesting to hear that. And they were surprised that we were even talking about it. So we were a little ahead of the curve, and that was nice. Right now my staff is working on closing the books. Hopefully we'll have that done the end of next month.
and we can have some figures for you as to where we ended up 2019. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Good
Swan.
job, Mike.
Last month, I went to Intercounty in Herkimer County. We saw a $44 million jail that has a capacity for 150, and presently they have like 33, so they're very concerned about the cost of this and not being able to fill it. I also attended the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council, quite informative. I really wasn't even sure what it was all about until I went, but it was really kind of an interesting meeting. I also attended the working group for the health insurance. I attended NISAC, and I'm on the standing committee for public health and mental health, and there we passed 2 resolutions through that. And then also this week we had a meeting in Horicon over the Swede Mountain Fire Tower. Mr. Hayjos was there to kind of give us an idea of, a time as when we could get started with cleaning up the trail, cutting the brush, and that kind of stuff. We had several people from that community who were very interested in helping out as volunteers, so we're looking forward to moving forward as soon as, we don't have as much snow on the ground. And we're hoping that we'll be ready to use this trail in, like, the summertime. So thank you, Mr. Hazel, for coming to that meeting. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personnel and Administration Committee met January 30th and February 11th, and we have a number of resolutions from starting with number 70 up to 79. I'd like to highlight 2 of those. Resolution number 74 is authorizing a license agreement with Revolution Rail Company for the use of the county-owned railroad track. The resolution states that it's a 1-year renewal. In 2020, the amount is $30,000 and no less than $35,000 for the year of 2021, and no less than $40,000 in years 2022, 2023, and 24. Didn't know if Administrator Moore had anything to add to that. Okay. And then lastly, resolution number 79, we had conducted interviews for the Weights and Measures Department upon the retirement of Herb Levin, and he's done a great job there. And we found a great candidate within our own ranks, which is always a positive. Jeff Waddell from the Buildings and Grounds Maintenance Department. He's just an incredible employee, and as supervisor, I'm just very happy that we can promote from within, and he's a great candidate. He's going to be a great director of Weights and Measures. I also would like to extend a very appreciative thanks to our sheriff, Director LaFleur, and Jessel, fire department, everybody who lended a hand and participated in the cleanup of that storm, or the safety of that storm that hit it. In Horicon, in Bolton, and Chester, we had problems on every road, and with the temperatures, we had a real problem with seniors that had no way to communicate. So we actually, a lot of us were out knocking on doors, checking on people, and I'm thankful that we have the department here and the staff and the sheriff's department, because nobody was injured, harmed, and for their efforts. So I just want to thank them. I'm glad to be in Warren County. Concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you. OCTAX met on January 21st and January 30th. We have 4 resolutions. The first is 47. It's for the Adirondack Civic Center. 48 is for the Lake George Visitor Center. These are standard contracts, annual contracts. 49 is a distribution of our 2020 OCTAX revenues, and 50 is the spending plan for occupancy tax. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to discuss them ad nauseum. Other than that, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism did not meet in February, but we have our next meeting on the 2nd of March. At that meeting, I'm going to put forth a plan for an advisory group to help tourism. I've worked it out with the chairman and administrator and the county budget officer. So we'll bring that forth that day. The only report I do have is Smith Travel, and I guess Mike kind of gave you the numbers on what we got out of it, but Smith Travel says the hotels in January were up 8.6%, 3,000 rooms, and the new one now, and this I have to thank Mike and our attorney for working on this with the Airbnbs, and 20%, 20.5% in January, 1,162 units. So we've been all hammering that for a while, and now it's going to start working out in our benefit thanks to those two people. The only meeting we did have, and this is something Joanne and I did, you probably all remember in January's post-star a couple of times about Washington County. They were struggling with tourism, and so we called a meeting, and they were willing to come to talk to us. We had their economic development, the chairman of tourism, and a tourism promotion director. And we sat for a few hours going over a few things, and when we get it all worked out, I'll introduce it at our tourism meeting. But for the most part, we're looking into helping them out. When we send out our email blasts to thousands of people, and about our county and our hotels and our lakes and we might add in sometime while you're here, go down and see Washington County's fair if it's that time of year, or take a ride over and see some of the things that they have in Washington County. So it's very inexpensive, just a little blurb on our stuff, and they were happy to hear that. So later on down the road, I'll let you know more about it. Again, and I have the same thing with all our responders. I mean, on Lake Luzerne got hit pretty bad too, and we had 7 roads closed for almost 36 hours. A lot of power down, and I really have to throw also with all our responders that everybody mentioned is National Grid. I think they did a phenomenal job. They were on, we all got text messages to join conference calls Saturday, Sunday, and we all got some personal telephone numbers that we can call when we got a problem, which is good. The gentleman I was working with really did a great job. I have some pictures on my phone, but I don't have them. But when they were leaving Monday, most of them were from Canada, and they were just great men and women. There was about 25 trucks parked in one spot, about 40 people standing there, and they all loved to have their picture taken. So it was really nice, okay? And the only other thing, I got to bring up this one because as supervisors and at-large supervisors, we all get tons of emails and tons of texts, most of them 90% questions and negative. On Saturday about 1 o'clock, I was working with a National Grid truck because I needed to get the power on East River Drive because that's where my wells are that we pump water. And my generators were running from 2 o'clock Friday till that time, almost, good time. And they had told me about another 10 or 15 minutes we'll be all done here and that area is going to have power. I appreciated it. I thanked them. I got in the car and I was driving home and I got a text message. And it was somebody on one of the streets on East River Drive, White Birch. And he says to me, my power's been out for 14 and a half hours. Do you have any idea when the power's coming back? Well, text him back and I said, as far as I know, you might get it within the next half hour, I said. 2 minutes later, I got a text back from him. He says, you're a magic man. As soon as I got your text, the power went out. So I kept that one, so that was a good one. So I thought I'd bring it up there. So we don't get too many of those, but it happens. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the report by the county administrator.
Thank you. 2 milestone anniversaries to report this month. Scott Rawson from the Sheriff's Office has 25 years. Wendy Decker from Countryside has 20 years. And I'd also like to acknowledge the retirement of Kathy Albert, who served more than 39 years in the Employment and Training Department, and her last day on the job is today. She's a respected senior employment and training counselor, and her 39 years of service is greatly appreciated. We certainly wish her well. As you all know, we're keeping the board informed at these meetings of real-world effects of the bail and discovery reform laws that went into effect on January 1st. As of this week, there are 65 inmates in the county jail. That's down from 82 at last month's board meeting. 3 individuals who were being held in the jail were released over the past month under the new law, and the charges that they were being held under were criminal sale of a controlled substance in the 5th degree, criminal sale of marijuana in the 2nd degree, criminal possession of a weapon in the 3rd degree. In terms of today's resolutions, the certificate of appointment that's in the back of the packet concerning the Youth Bureau, that entire those appointments are going to go back to the Human Services Committee. Human Services approved all of those appointments last month at their meeting and sent them to Chairman Thomas for ratification. The process on these appointments is that the towns make them, they send them to DSS, DSS takes them to the committee for approval, and then the chairman appoints them. But Supervisor Garrity, in reviewing the resolutions, pointed out that the appointee for Warrensburg is not correct. And in looking into it, we discovered that errors were made by staff that also resulted in another town's appointee not even making it to the committee. So I've asked DSS to review all of the appointees to this board with all the town supervisors and to bring everything back to committee again for the committee's approval on March 2nd. Resolution 78, which is the resolution that would change the health insurance contribution percentages for non-union employees in accordance with what CSEA, what was in the CSEA deal. That resolution needs to be tabled. That's because the CSEA contract failed on Tuesday night. It got voted down 77 in favor, 152 against. That was a mediated agreement. The county had previously offered CSEA a deal, and CSEA declared impasse. We got a mediator, and this was the agreement the mediator came up with, and both sides agreed to, but the rank and file rejected that agreement. So the management team needs to decide whether we go back to mediation with CSEA or whether we proceed directly to fact-finding. Resolution 74 is the Revolution Rail License Agreement, which was drafted in accordance with the framework that was set by the Public Works Committee. I believe you've all received a copy of that draft agreement a little later than I had hoped to get it to you. Sorry about that. Resolution 79, which was already referenced by Supervisor Simpson, is appointing Jeffrey Waddell as Weights and Measures Director, replacing Herb Levin. His first day was Monday the 17th, which was a good day to start because it was a holiday. Jeff has been with the county for 18 years, and we were all very happy to give him a shot at this. He does a great job in buildings and grounds, and I think he'll do a great job in Weights and Measures as well. Resolution 89 is the Census Outreach Program. That's the authorization for the county administrator to handle all approvals up to an amount of $50,000 in county funds just to get this program rolling. I do have an update. I plan on updating the committee, of course, but I thought an update to the board would be in order as well. Sarah Frankenfeld has been able to reconfigure the budget, and she anticipates that the approximate cost to Warren County, when all is said and done, is going to be about $8,500, which is significantly better than the $50,000 that the committee recommended. Sarah is hesitant to say that that's where we're going to land, because at the end of the day, it's contingent upon the state funding that's been promised, and the state has told us that application approvals will be out to all the counties by March 10th. So that means any expenses we incur before March 10th, they're our expenses. The state won't reimburse them. And so we're hoping that the state can actually meet that deadline of March 10th so that we can access the state funding for this program. So what have we done so far? We approved, I executed an agreement with Sidekick Creative to do web-based outreach and traditional program promotion. The contract is not to exceed $20,000. Again, we're going to try to keep that to $8,500. We have in the agreement, Sidekick will not bill us until services are actually performed. So I hope that works in our favor, where we can, incur these costs after March 10th, if that's when the date is going to be for the state. Activities that have been conducted so far with Sidekick include creating a Warren County Census 2020 website and creating a Warren County Census 2020 Facebook and Instagram accounts. The planning department will be posting to those accounts 4 or 5 days a week, and Sidekick is going to be posting to them 1 or 2 days a week. The Sidekick posts are going to be boosted to target all Warren County residents that have social media accounts. And Sarah is going to present these web pages and accounts to the Economic Growth Committee on Monday, the 24th, this coming Monday. And we will get you those website addresses so that you can know what they are and share them with your constituents as well. $80,000 of the $100,000 in state funding that will be made available to Warren County has already been allocated in the plan that we're presenting to the state for approval. And that includes funding for the Southern Adirondack Library System, which we're happy to report has been approved by the state as a not-for-profit. The remaining $20,000 of those funds, it's in flux. Sarah's working with the not-for-profits to come up with plans to make use for those funds. If we can't figure out a way for the not-for-profits to use those funds, then we will be submitting for a waiver of that 75% requirement for funds to be spent by not-for-profits, and the state's indicated that they'll entertain that waiver. In terms of the not-for-profits, Sarah's still working with them to get them all certified, and here's the list so far that have filed applications to get that state certification. Family Services Association of Glens Falls, Cornell Cooperative Extension, the Conkling Center, Tri-County United Way, and Open Door Mission. 30,000 census flyers targeting different focus groups have already been ordered. Sarah is working in conjunction with the Glens Falls School Social Studies Department and the Drama Club to put together videos about the census. And we've requested thousands of flyers and posters from the Census Bureau itself. We requested those at the end of January. The Census Bureau has told us that they will fill that order, but we haven't received it yet. As soon as we receive it, we'll start distributing the materials. And we're also available and willing to make brief presentations about the census to any organization who's interested. So if you have any organization in your community that would like to host a presentation of that kind, just let me know, and I'll get it to Sarah. In terms of the schedule, the first mailing from the Census Bureau will go out, and the census will officially open on March 12th. The next complete count committee meeting is scheduled for March 9th. That's going to be 10 o'clock in our services building across the way on the 3rd floor. Everybody's welcome to attend that if you're interested in attending that. And we're also planning a Census Day event here at the Municipal Center for the official Census Day, which was designated as April 1st. Details on that will be provided as it materializes. I do want to thank Sarah for her tireless work on this. It's been a real project, and she's done a great job on it. And Sarah also wanted to be sure that I thank Supervisor Driscoll, who she says has been super helpful in coordinating with the not-for-profits and getting them to where they need to be. Thank you. My schedule since last month has been pretty busy. On the 23rd, that was when we had the CSEA mediation session that led to the contract that's just been rejected. The 28th, I went to NISAC for the county administrators meeting as well as the budget update. We're monitoring all of that. I'm working with the budget officer. I spent all day the 31st at the Cool Insuring Arena. We're working on hopefully an announcement that will be fairly significant to come, but I'm knocking on wood hoping that we can make that work. On February 3rd, I participated in an interview commissioned by EDC to assess economic development in this county. On the 4th, I went to Open Door Mission. I had a really nice tour with Kim Cook. She filled me in on everything that they're doing and where they're hoping to go in the future. and she had really good things to say about our DSS department, which has been ramping up their partnership with the Open Door mission. On the 5th, we had our annual incident review of workplace violence complaints. On the 6th, we had negotiations with the PBA. Their contract expired at the end of last year. We're hoping to get them into a 2 or 3 year agreement starting this year. On the 7th, we had Weights and Measures Director interviews. Thank you to Supervisor McGowan, Supervisor Garrity, and Supervisor Simpson for helping us cull through those initial applicants and get 2 finalists to the Personnel Committee. Also on the 7th, Supervisor Bramer mentioned we had the Revolution Rail negotiation. Thank you to Supervisor Bramer and Supervisor Hogan. On February 10th, 13th, and 18th, we had department head evaluations. On the 12th, as Chairman Thomas mentioned, we met with SUNY Adirondack as well as Washington County to plot out a strategy moving forward on how the 2 counties can be better partners with SUNY Adirondack. And on the 19th, we had our quarterly health insurance working group meeting. Good news, the accruals for 2020 so far are in good shape. And in 2019, they were right on target. We didn't really add to the reserve, and we didn't have to deplete the reserve. So that was a good planning on behalf of our health insurance consultants, Yeager and Flynn. They gave good advice. Also on the 19th, we had a negotiating team meeting to regroup on what we're going to do with CSEA, as well as to everybody get on the same page for the PBA. We have negotiations starting again with the PBA next week. And my final item, which I believe I've emailed to everybody already, is our bond rating. And I'm happy to report that Warren County has maintained its AA stable bond rating. Thank you to the County Treasurer's Office for all they do to keep us on solid financial footing. Some of the factors that led to maintaining that rating were strong budgetary performance, a strong management team, very strong fund balance levels, very strong liquidity, a low debt burden, and an adequate economy. Our bond rating is not likely to be lowered as long as we keep up the good work that we've been doing. The rating could be raised. We can get to a AA+, but only if the local economy demonstrates sustained improvement. And as everybody knows, and as Supervisor Wild mentioned earlier, we're working towards that goal in the Economic Growth Committee this year by launching a strategic planning effort and trying to do a better job coordinating all the various entities in this county. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next is a report by the County Attorney.
Good morning. First, I just want to provide some clarifications to Resolution Number 31 of 2020. At committee, we discussed that once the board approves the assigned counsel plan, it will have to be approved by both the Warren County Bar Association and the Chief Administrative Judge. However, after the meeting, I went back and checked the state law, and I also checked our plan. And because we took out the provision regarding the conflict defender, the plan will actually need to be approved by the Office of Indigent Legal Services, not the Chief Administrative Judge. And this might be easier to accomplish, so I'm really optimistic about that revision. Second, once the board passes Resolution Number 82, which is the request to extend the mortgage recording tax, I'll send that resolution to Assemblyman Steck's office, and he plans on introducing that bill on Monday. Just a couple updates on litigation. Oral arguments in front of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals for the case of Dickinson versus York have been scheduled for February 27th. The court has decided the motion to dismiss on Kozlowski versus Warren County, and the court dismissed all the claims against Warren County. There is one remaining claim, which is not against Warren County, and a conference will be scheduled for that remaining claim, and a scheduling order will be issued for that. Finally, I just want to say that yesterday, Attorney Ryan Dickey from my office argued in front of the 3rd Department Appellate Division regarding Forest Enterprises. Ryan did extremely well. He's very well spoken in court, and he was tremendous. I would really encourage any of you to go talk to him about it and ask him any questions you might have about it. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, next you have reading of communications.
We have the monthly report of criminal and family workloads for December 2019 and January 2020 from the Warren County Probation Department. Emails from June Maxim dated February 15th and 19th, 2020 regarding the residency of a member of the Board of Supervisors. Email from Peter Brothers dated February 21, 2020 regarding the board's decision on an appointment to the Warren Washington County IDA Board. Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Court December payment in the amount of $2,552. And Washington County Resolution Number 36 of 2020 appointing members to the Warren Washington County IDA Board.
Okay, reading of resolutions.
Proposed resolution numbers 28 through 90 were distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the Warren County website last week. Resolution numbers 29 and 84 were amended after mailing. Those were distributed to you yesterday, and copies are on your desk. The change to Resolution 29, that's amending the budget. We needed to break out the line for health services to show that it was a 2019 budget item, while the rest are 2020. And for 84, that's creating a code for the assigned fund balance, SUNY Adirondack operations. We originally had that as creating a reserve, and we needed to replace reserve with budget code on all instances. A motion is needed to approve the amendments to Resolutions 29 and 84 as provided.
Moved by Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Merlino. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Resolution number 91 was produced after mailing. The resolution was distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors, posted to the website, and there are copies on your desk. The motion is needed to bring 91 to the floor.
moved by Supervisor Liggett. Do we have a second? Seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Discussion? Yes, Mr. Beatty.
Yeah, this is number 91. I'm going to vote no to bring it to the floor. It didn't go through personnel, whether that's the right of the chairman or not. That's been the normal process to go through personnel if we're going to add someone to the Warren Washington County IDA. So, to me, we're circumventing the process. This Mr. Stevenson, whoever his name is, I'm sure he's a fine man. Never met him. I don't think anybody, probably 90% of the people in this room haven't. Maybe 80%. But the fact of the matter is I can't vote on somebody that I've never even met before for a position that I think is fairly important. And we do know how advantageous Mr. Whitehead has been being on that board. Unfortunately, he got bounced for a reason I still can't figure out. So I'm going to vote no, and hopefully this board will vote no to not to even allow it to vote on this resolution today, but to have it go back to personnel and have it go through the proper process. And if Mr. Stevenson wants that position, he can come that day and be interviewed, as well as anybody else, Mr. Whitehead, if he still wants it, or anybody else who wants it. But for me to vote blindly on some person, that's just ridiculous to me. So, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Supervisor Bramer. Oh, I apologize. Supervisor Sieber. I was looking that way and over here. Sorry.
There's only a few women on the board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to Doug's comments, and my concern is that this was presented yesterday. I think that a good practice would be to provide us with these resolutions and for consideration well before the night of the meeting. And for that reason, I will not support it coming to the floor to even have a discussion about the vote. I think definitely a no on that. And I think we can do a better job moving forward, and I hope that we see that change in protocol as our chairman.
I'll take responsibility for that. Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may address the board on the nominee here for that position, that Mr. Stevenson owns Stevenson Lumber, and they are a great asset to our community. They also own Lincoln Logs and Adirondack Cross over in Johnsburg at Rotarian. And he has attended our economic development initiative forums that we've had in the town of Chester. As a good, outstanding community member, I would highly recommend him for this position.
Thank you. Supervisor McNiven.
Yeah, I just have one question. The question that I have is, are we procedurally following the correct process and procedure? Do these appointments have to go before committee? I've seen some conflicting documents where it suggests that a committee has to be involved in this. So I throw that out on the floor because I guess I don't know. It should, Mary, I mean, should these go to committee? I mean, I don't know.
I would prefer that to county attorney, please.
Sure. I actually don't know. I've never seen the bylaws for the IDA, so I don't know what the process is for appointment.
Okay. I'm going to have some difficulty voting for it because again, the information that I've seen suggests to me that it seems to be a straight line to committee.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman. The IDA appointments that came through last month also were presented to us at the very last minute, and I was disturbed about that at the time. However, I voted yes, and now we're seeing a repeat of the exact same thing that I know people talked to you about and that we were upset about not seeing the resolutions earlier. So I'm going to be a no on this as well, and I would like to see it go through the Personnel Committee. And I appreciate that Mr. Stevenson may be a good community member. This is not about that. I have not met him. This is not about him personally. I just would like to see the process be more clear and available to us as board members prior to the night before the meeting. I didn't even see this until this morning, actually. I was traveling yesterday.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrity.
All I can go back to is my 4 years as chairman. I always made the appointments. They never went through a committee. They were always done at a board level. In my 4 years, that's the way it was done. That's I can't speak past, but that's the way it was done.
What if you saw a written document that suggested that this is the process and procedure, but you did it your way 4 years ago?
I did it the way it was handed to me. So, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, yes, Mary.
I do know the IDA has their own legal representation, and I'm assuming that for the past however many years, they haven't been letting people sit on their board that don't belong there. So I'm just curious if anyone knows what IDA's counsel has said about this issue and how members should be appointed.
Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Vice Chairman of the IDA, I don't know if the council has been asked this directly, and I'm sorry that they're not here to represent that. I would say that the bylaws of the IDA represent what the IDA does, and they take the referral and approval from both the Washington County Board of Supervisors and Warren County Supervisors as to our to be on that. So what our internal process is, I think, is what's the question.
Anybody else care to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, to me, this is as clear as mud, okay? So how we can proceed makes no sense to me at all, other than to vote against it coming to the floor as a resolution. I mean, if we go forward with this, shame on us for not having clarity on a number of these issues. And again, referring to Ms. Bramer, the fact that we got it at 12 hours before our board meeting makes no sense to me at all either. And that happened a month ago, and we were all very disappointed with that process. And here again, 1 month later, we're doing the same thing again. So I'm rather disappointed that we even have this in our packet and that we're asking. Mr. Simpson said he was going to resign from that board for 4 months. So this isn't any news flash. Yet we're pretending like it's 12 hours before the board meeting, we get this thing sent. She doesn't even get a chance to read it since she was traveling. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So please, let's vote to not even bring it to the floor, and personnel can go and do what they should do, which is talk to Mr. Stevenson and anybody else, Mr. Whitehead or anybody else who wants to, and then they can pass along their recommendation on who they think should be on this board. Thank you.
Anyone else care to? Yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The chairman and I, and I've also talked to Ryan. This is an appointed position by the chairman, and you know, and the confusion comes in, and I understand that because you know, but this is an appointment by the chairman of the board. It's not, you know, and how it's been done in the past is, you know, it's been a different way, and it's confusing to me too. The one thing I will state is, you know, I'm backing, you know, the chairman in his appointments, which I've, you know, if it's said it a few and others haven't, but I'm trying to respect the position of the chairman here of his appointment. But I will bring up my concern was last time I was a little concerned by the shortness of the last appointment that, you know, how it all came about, and this particular one coming in at the last hour too, and which you did apologize. I just needed to get that off my chest, but, you know, like I said, I support the appointment, but what I can't support is again, the last minute decision. So, even though it is an appointment, I'm going to have to say I'm going to go no as of today, so we can all get a better understanding of how this process, and maybe get something on the books of the proper way to do it, so we all have the main understanding.
Thank you. Supervisor Merlino.
The only comment I'll make on this, that again, I've been around. I'm in my 15th year. Too long. First few years I was on that board, and I was asked by the chairman, and he asked me if I'd like to be on it, and my qualifications that I could be on it, and I agreed, and I got on it, and that's how I got it, not a vote. But to make a comment, I think it is maybe about time we stop these last-minute appointments unless it's a super emergency. And maybe it's time for some of the committees to vent on this stuff. And, you know, this way we do them on all, not just this one. Every time we have something that's got to be last minute, we should just turn it down until we have a meeting on it, a committee meeting. So, you know, it could stop a lot of trouble in the future and a lot of headaches now. Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
The chairman took full responsibility for the delay. As I found out during this meeting, it's part of that rests on me as well. The chairman brought this resolution to the clerk of the board on what day is Friday, on Wednesday. I didn't get to the email until yesterday. So when I got to the email, I said to Amanda, get it out to the board as soon as possible, and that's what she did. So I don't want Frank, you know, Frank, you don't know that yet because you haven't seen my emails on it, but let's, you know, give credit where credit's due. It's partially me.
Yes, and as to last month's meeting, I had asked Mr. Stevenson to sit on this board, and Mr. Stevenson is the type of individual that doesn't just agree. He researches things. He's a busy man, and he said he would get back to me, so I waited as long as I could wait, and he didn't get back to me. So I asked Mr. Simpson to remain in that position for 1 month, and I knew I would hear back from Mr. Stevenson, and I did. That's why Supervisor Simpson stepped down, because he had told me that earlier, that he wanted to step down. So that's January. Yes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, not to drag this out too much longer, but as a reality check for any of us that are supervisors that have to pull together for a board meeting each month, we all know that things come in at the last minute, and that's a difficult thing to do, and we wish we could always give everybody advance notice on what's there, but there is sometimes where it does come in at the last minute, and this is, as you had just explained, one of those. Also, another comment was made about appointments not knowing people. I must admit, I'm guilty of voting people onto committees. There's some on the youth commission that are before us that I have never met. I don't know if they'd be appropriate, but they came referred to us through the towns. There's many other committees that come up each month that we basically ratify here without really me individually knowing who they are, but we trust that they're there for a reason. They will do a good job.
Frank?
That's Supervisor Garrity.
Just one comment. If I kind of knew which way the direction the board wants to go, I would certainly make a motion to table the 91 if I knew some direction what you want to accomplish. If I knew what everybody wanted to accomplish in the next 30 days, I would make a motion to table it if I knew where we were going to go. But if it's just a feel good, we're going to... I just don't know. That's my question, Mr. Chairman. If I knew what we wanted to do by not voting on it today, I can go with that to bring the board back together to make an appointment.
Court to go to personnel.
Hold up. Supervisor Driscoll had his hand up earlier. He hasn't spoken yet.
Supervisor Leggett voiced some of my questions. Earlier this morning, we decided to go back this month and look at concerns of one or two members with the youth board appointments. And it may be apples and oranges, but perhaps if one person has a concern with this resolution, maybe we should go back and respect that individual and go back. I don't think that the business of the IDA is going to be compromised or damaged by us going to do our work during this coming month. Not let it drag on, but do our diligence and make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. It doesn't sound like this is so urgent that it needs to happen this month. I don't know if Supervisor Simpson's willing to continue to stay on for a couple of months or to leave this... I'm sorry? Oh, you've already resigned? Oh, okay. And I don't know if that's a position that can stay open or not, but I do know in the past Supervisor Conover took it through personnel when Travis Whitehead was appointed the first time, but I think it's more of a procedural issue if our county attorney is unfamiliar with the process in terms of how that appointment gets made and the bylaws, and it's coming across in the last, whether it be a day or 2 days, whatever that process is, perhaps we could just become a little more informed and take a look at this through the committee process or whatever process needs to happen. It seems that there's general concerns, and Supervisor Leggett brings up a very good point that the rest of the appointments in the youth board came from an actual committee, not from an individual. And I respect the fact that if in fact it's your appointment to make, but I do think we should know the procedure if in fact that's what that question is.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with Supervisor Garrity that maybe this is an opportunity to table this we get a better feeling to what the bylaws actually say in the IDA and the LDC, whether it has to go through personnel committee, or whether it doesn't. Historically speaking, Supervisor Garrity had the privilege to make those appointments. When I was mayor in the city of Glens Falls, it was my privilege to make independent appointments. However, if there is a bylaw language that will require the personnel committee, I don't see why we don't wait another 30 days. I think the committee can still meet. Whether they have a quorum or not, that's certainly up to them, but it gives us an opportunity to find out actually what the bylaws are. And if the bylaws are consistent with what we're hearing, then maybe we adopt that officially as a policy going forward.
Okay, well, the motion on the floor is to whether to bring it to the floor or not. So I'm going to cease discussion on this issue, and I'm going to ask the clerk to conduct a roll call vote.
Okay, and this is a motion to bring Resolution 91 to the floor. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Ms. Sieber?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
That resolution the motion fails. We only have 287 in favor.
That motion fails, 287 in favor.
So resolution 91 that's in your packet and the certificate of appointment that were in your mailed packets, both of those are not up for discussion today. And then resolution 82 on your index, that's not listed as a roll call, but it is a roll call, and in fact it will require a 2/3 majority vote. That's on the municipal home rule request. The last thing we need to address is resolution 78, which Ryan had mentioned. Is it tabled or withdrawn?
Doesn't matter.
It needs to be tabled or withdrawn.
I'll make a motion to table. That's,
Number 78.
thank you.
Motion by Supervisor Seaver to table.
Bramer.
Bramer. Jeez.
Try to tell us something.
To table
Frank, we're
resolution
just going to
number
have to put
78.
you down here so you can look at them opposite.
I'll second.
Seconded by Supervisor Diamond. Any discussion on that?
78.
There is no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Number 78 is tabled.
Well, that's good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
What are we going to do now?
About what?
Is it proper to take the appointment, is it proper to discuss in the Personnel Committee the appointment of IDAs, or are we going to wait for an opinion from an attorney, or what are we going to do?
My opinion is the county attorney will tell us what to do.
So that would be done at the Personnel Committee, Administration Personnel Committee? Will be agenda
I should
item?
report to it, yeah. All the years I've been here, I don't recall anybody being interviewed for an IDA
No,
board.
No, I stated my 4 years the way we did it, but I mean, there seems to be a difference of opinion. And I just want to know what we're going to do, so if it's going to be on the personnel, that's in March, just so everybody knows it's not in April or February, it's going to be in March, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I forget the date in March, it's about a week before the board meeting, and I just want to make sure it'll be on an agenda item to solve it that day, I guess.
Yes, Mary.
I would be happy to issue an opinion. I just need to get all the documents. But I would also ask someone on the IDA if you could also ask your counsel to issue an opinion. I mean, you have your own legal counsel. I would love to know what they say about membership. I would love to know what they say about how members are appointed. So if they could also issue an opinion or maybe even come to the committee meeting, that would be wonderful. And I will also look into it as well.
The Personnel and Administrative meeting is on March 5th at 10 a.m.
I have one other question.
Okay.
When I read the resolutions, and I read the youth board resolutions, which our town board approved, and I guess if everybody wants to come to my town board meeting and interview this guy, you can, but we didn't interview him. The problem with the resolution for the youth board was they had the personnel people mixed up when they put out the... I'm glad I read the resolutions, or I would have appointed somebody from Stony Creek to be the Warrensburg rep. But anyways, I read it. I didn't know who the person was. I inquired, how did that name come? It wasn't the one that the town board sent forth to the county, and it got mixed up. So that one certainly is done by the towns. I think we ought to leave it to the towns to appoint their own people, to send them to the county to be appointed to the youth board. I don't think you're going to get anybody if they got to have 20 members of the Board of Supervisors questioning somebody who wants to serve as a volunteer on the youth board. But that's the reason why that happened. There was a name for the town of Warrensburg. I didn't know who the person was. I called one of our town board members, do you know who this is? No. So I gave it to Ryan, and we started looking into it and found out that they got mixed up over at DSS. So I don't think we need to make a huge project out of that, and we didn't have time to correct the things in the future. And then if there's other things coming to personnel, I'm okay with it. We need to know so everybody can be there that day and voice their opinions.
Well, the county administrator has moved forward and asked his assistant administrator and I think the county attorney and a couple others to review all of these boards and review their bylaws and get them up to date. A lot of these things have been done 30, 40 years ago, and they're just carried on from one chairman or one board to the next, and pretty soon you're off the rails and nobody knows what's right. So that will probably take some time, but that's where we're headed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Merlino.
I'm not to belabor this youth board. I mean, there is one from Lake Luzerne. Is that the one that's missing?
No, what's missing, I believe, is Stony Creek, and the individual that's named on this certificate for Warrensburg is the wrong individual.
Okay. So I don't see. I thought we had one on.
Well, this is part of what we'll review with DSS. We'll make sure we reach out to all the towns and that we've got it right, and then we'll bring everybody back to the Human Services Committee meeting, and we'll have the committee approve everybody.
Okay, discussion on other resolutions.
Excuse me.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Resolution 74, that has to do with the Revolution Rail agreement. As you may have heard before, I've been totally in favor of moving forward with an agreement with Revolution Rail because I think it brings more opportunities to the North Country. I do have some concerns about the language in the license agreement, and it says confidential all over it. I'm not sure if we can really talk about that, but I'm curious, what is our approach to dealing with this if we do have some concerns about the license agreement? If we approve this resolution today, are we approving this license agreement also?
I think it's appropriate to talk about any concerns now.
Talk it in favor?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, then I'll go through it. I don't know if everybody has access to it. Item 4, for those of you who do, there's a statement in here about the rail corridor being a public asset, and as such, during the regular season, reasonable accommodation will be made for recreational uses that do not interfere with the rail bike operations. What is reasonable? Right, so if we have someone else that wants to use the rail corridor, how do we define reasonable? And in whose eyes are reasonable?
Well, the county DPW is first and foremost the agency that makes sure that what's going on in that rail corridor is safe. So if you're talking about ATVs flying down the track where rail riders are coming up with a bike, that's not reasonable. But if you're talking about somebody walking their dog off to the side of the track as the rail bike goes by, as long as the dog is friendly, that's reasonable. That's the intent there. It's for DPW to work with Revolution Rail and make sure that we have some harmony there with the people that are using the corridor.
Thank you. I agree with that. Do we know, on item 7, it talks about the maintenance of the premises, and it implies that the county's going to be responsible for all the washouts and removal of obstructions and mowing of material to start with. Do we know what that cost is going to be for the section of rail?
Kevin can get you the gross cost. It's going to net out to 12.5% because the clearing of the obstructions and the repair of the washouts is due to the Halloween storm.
Right.
FEMA's going to cover half of that, and then the state's going to pick up the next 12.5%. What was the gross on that, Kevin? $100,000. So we're talking $12,500.
Okay. So there's also something here on that same section that talks about the licensees shall monitor the physical condition of the premises, rail infrastructure, culverts, so on and so forth. I've seen other agreements that we've had in contracts to lease property where we state that the VC is responsible to maintain this in the condition that it was presented to them. Is that the intent here? Or is there some other intent that if there's more blowdowns that are above and beyond the capacity of Revolution Rail, we have to get involved?
Well, one of the challenges of managing the rail property is accessing it by DPW to make sure that the culverts aren't plugged or that, you know, a tree hasn't fallen here or there. It's just, it's difficult to get back there unless you rent a high rail. And so that's the intent of that. It's Revolution Rail is going to be on premises, so they can be our eyes and ears if there's any major improvement or any major repairs that we need to undertake.
And I agree with that, but are we exposing ourselves to additional costs
No.
based on this license agreement?
The costs that we're going to be responsible for, the maintenance costs, relate to the county's responsibility as owners of a rail corridor. The costs that are related to Revolution Rail's ability to be a successful business, that's not on us to pay those costs, and that's in the agreement.
So just one more follow-up. So if there is another major storm and they can't operate any longer, are we any obligation from a timing standpoint to make that corridor operational for them?
No, the answer is no, and that is in, let's see.
Paragraph 7,
Yeah.
line 4.
Yeah.
I asked about that, Mike.
I don't have any lines on my copy.
You just have to read.
Oh. It's licensors' obligations to maintain the track exist only to the extent necessary to satisfy the licensors' operations and duties, not the licensees. So if there's a washout, we repair it when we repair it. We're not under any obligation to repair it immediately because it affects the business.
Okay, I'm all set with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question on that particular resolution, 74, is it? Under the licensing agreement, would it make sense for us to require them to submit the ridership report by the end of November, so we have time to do our due diligence, so we can examine the report, and make a decision on whether we want to renew? This particular language says that it's due on the 31st. I think that backs us into a little bit of time.
Sure. Yeah. It's in their interest to get it to us earlier because we have to approve the extension by the end of the year, but we could change it to the end of November.
If you want to, yeah, I think that would make a little bit more sense to require it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would actually do the board meeting in November because committee meetings are always the week after. So we want the report before the committee meeting, so we'll make it whatever that board meeting is.
Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
I wanted to defer to Supervisor Shepler. She had her hand up before me.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, my question is on number 74, who is going to maintain and repair the arms and lights for the safety of the people who will be traveling on the rail?
That's our responsibility to make sure that the arms? Yeah, that they're in operating condition.
So, as a resident of the town of Thurman, and I do travel that road quite frequently, and there are 2 sets of arms, and we've had numerous problems in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I call the county.
I believe the arms are all pinned up right now because we don't have any rail traffic. But correct, yeah. But yeah, you would call the county, and it's DPW's responsibility.
And what would the turnaround be on that?
I'm sorry.
What would the turnaround? How fast would they be responding?
I don't want to interject here. As far as the arm, they're not really, we're not shutting them down for Rev Rail not doing this crossing that road. So the arms will not be operating. Right now they're shut off, they're shut. We don't have any rail down. They're not crossed any of the roads.
I think if we did have rail traffic and you had a problem with one of the arms, the answer to that question is immediately.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good answer.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Supervisor Shepler, we did talk about making sure that they did not go across any of the roads because we don't want people, trying to get across the road with a rail bike because it's slow and there's cars are fast, and so they agreed not to go anywhere near they're going to turn around before they get to the crossing. So we won't have to worry about that. My other question was to make sure in the license agreement that it's clear. I thought we said in the negotiating meeting that they were going to do the mowing. and grass maintenance, and that's, I'm getting two shaking head yes, and Ryan saying no.
No, we have to move the mowing.
Right, but and also going forward, if they want to do mowing along the line where they're operating, that's on them. That's not going to be a county crew. But can't we just put that in there to make me feel better that they're going to be responsible? Mm-hmm. But we're not going to do it either then. Okay, fine.
Sorry, I thought Kevin wanted to do it. Mary had it right, and I changed it yesterday.
We'll move it back.
Supervisor Saber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think there's a lot of questions again surrounding a document that was sent out last night. And, you know, I appreciate the overview that our county administrator gave. I think it was last week. I thought those points were very helpful. But until we really get a chance to look at the agreement, I know that I don't have all the information I would want to be able to make a good, informed, educated decision about it. For instance, during committee, I thought we had a lengthy discussion, and I thought it was led by Supervisor Conover regarding the years and the options in terms of moving forward. And I guess in this resolution, I'm confused about, you know, we're waiting to find out what the government says regarding the abandonment issue with the railroad. And, you know, I know it says an option for mutual agreement moving forward for 21 and, or 22, 23, and 24, but I thought we were addressing just 1 year of it. And maybe I misunderstood that.
We decided at the committee meeting that if we were going to have options in this contract, they've got to be by mutual agreement, and that we would, the decision we came to was that we would decide before December 31st whether to extend the option for the subsequent year, and that's contingent upon our receipt of a ridership report and our review of a ridership report. And that's, I believe that's represented in the draft agreement, what the decision that the committee made on that issue.
Okay, and like I said, I just hadn't had the chance to really read that contract to verify that. But I don't know if anyone else feels the same way. I'd support tabling it to go back to committee, but I'm just one.
Anyone else that hasn't spoken have any? Okay, Supervisor Weil.
Mr. Chairman, briefly, I also have voiced my displeasure about things coming at the last minute, but is there a compelling reason why we need to vote on this today?
Yes, because they won't do it if we can't advance it today. They have to have some lead time to invest in the additional rail bikes.
All right, so I'm totally in favor of moving forward with this.
Yeah, that was the thing. Have to go.
Supervisor Beatty.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to ask two of the other questions Mr. Wild asked, which was, is there a reason why we have to vote on it today? Because this is the first time I've been able to read it, and I can't, you know, I'm a pretty fast reader, but I can't go through it and digest it in 35 seconds. So I'm probably going to vote no. I'm torn because when I get it at, you know, at such a late hour, I think probably Ryan and everyone did a great job on it. But when I don't understand something, I can't vote yes if I don't understand it. So that's why. Not that I'm against it. It's just that I can't vote yes if I haven't had time to digest it. So that's where I am. Thanks.
Okay.
It was online yesterday. I read it. I made a couple of notes.
Yeah.
So, again, it was online yesterday.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Any other resolutions? Yes.
Okay,
Brandon.
on Resolution 38, in the vein of things coming to you at the last minute, I would like to amend Resolution 38. This is having to do with the Bay Road property. And, you know, this property, I know Treasurer Swan will say, has been sitting around for 40 years. A long time. It's not in the county ownership. It hasn't been. We have not ever taken it in the foreclosure process.
The committee, under my leadership as chair, has made significant progress in 2019 into 2020. We had a plan set forward last fall with going out to get estimates of the demolition costs just so that we knew what we were getting ourselves into before we took the property in foreclosure. Once we understood what those costs were, we were going to foreclose on the property, assuming it wasn't too bad. We got these estimates back. They're not too bad. So we are moving forward with the foreclosure process in an individual foreclosure proceeding. I understand that the county attorney has already commenced that proceeding, so we're on our way. And my goal was to have the opportunity to sell the building as is to a responsible person to reuse that property if there's anyone out there to do it. I don't have anyone lined up ready to go to buy this building. I would like to see it put out for a public auction in an open process. And if we don't get anyone, fine, then we'll go forward with the demolition. I understand that this bid is very good and I don't want to lose that opportunity for the county. So I would respectfully ask, as the chairperson of this committee, for a little bit of leeway to have the opportunity to offer it for sale first, award this bid, but subject to seeing if we can get a buyer. If not, then we will go forward with the demolition, and that will be done within 6 months, because the guy is only willing to hold his bid for 6 months. So I'm only asking you to help me amend this resolution for the opportunity to sell it. If we don't get anyone good, then we'll just turn down all the offers, if we get any. So I am looking for an amendment to, and I put it on your desks, although it was just this morning, that we would award the bid contingent upon issuance of a notice to proceed within 6 months of the commencement of the agreement, which notice to proceed will be issued if the county is unable to sell the property as is at a public auction to be held as soon as possible. And I would make that motion to amend Resolution 38.
Can I comment?
This is the in writing version? Is that what I'm looking at here?
Yes.
Okay. There's a motion to amend. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Supervisor Diamond. Discussion. Supervisor Beatty. Or, geez, I did it again. Supervisor Garrity.
Am I that popular?
At least I know where I live.
I thought I did too, but maybe I don't.
Anyway.
All right.
I oppose amending this. You know, if this, I think this goes back 10, 12, 14 years. We're finally moving to do the right thing with this building, get it tore down, and either sell it, put it back on the tax rolls, or doing something right. And it's government at its worst if we just delay it again. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right to the people going across who go down Bay Road every day and look at the graffiti on this building. I think it's time to tear it down, and then it can always be put up for sale later on. And the process of doing this, we thought it was an environmental concerns, but I just think it's right for the town of Queensbury to tear it down and move ahead with it. Because if somebody wanted it, why didn't they buy it years ago? They haven't. So that's my take on it. I won't vote for delaying this.
Before we go any further, the correct process is we have to suspend our rules, and before we can amend it, because it wasn't before us until today. So if someone wants to move that, moved by Supervisor Bramer, seconded by Supervisor Diamond, and a show of hands to suspend the rules.
But don't put your hand because you would be cut of those.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Is there a discussion with a show of hands for support, or no, there's no discussion?
Oh, it's about suspending the rules. What do you want to discuss?
Well,
Do a roll call.
yeah.
Okay, then do a roll call.
Press the roll call vote.
Roll call for suspension?
For suspending the rules.
To allow discussion on the amendment.
Right, to go
Okay.
back to the amendment.
Thank you.
I had the wrong order, sorry.
What are we voting on?
We're suspending the rules to be able to bring an amendment to the floor.
Correct. To Resolution 38.
The vote is to suspend the rules to amend the resolution. That's the second piece of it. You suspend the rules first, then you make the amendment.
Mr. Weil?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver? Yes. Mr. Beatty?
To bring it to the floor so we can talk about it, I'll vote yes to do that, to discuss it.
Ms. Shepler?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Conover?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Chairman Thomas?
No.
558 votes in favor, so that passes.
Okay, so,
Is that a two-thirds or is it a majority?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you did not reach the two-thirds majority. I apologize. This is for simple majority. You needed 667. Okay,
there's 558 votes in favor, and you needed 667, so the rules are not suspended.
So the amendment...
So the amendment can't come forward.
Okay.
Any other resolutions that you'd like to discuss? Yes.
So is discussion closed then, as it relates to the initial resolution?
Doesn't have to be, no.
Okay. I do, so just to stay on topic, and then I do have a roll call request on a couple other resolutions.
Okay.
But, you know, I think a lot of this discussion took place prior to me coming back on the board. I've tried to get up to speed on it. I'm inclined to abstain to the vote, but I understand that counts just as a no vote, and that, of course, you can abstain when you need more information. But I'd like to see the resolution read that we will eventually sell this property if we're going to go through with removal and not keep it as a county property and get it back on the tax roll. But the way this resolution is presented, it doesn't say that, so I would not support it. But I would also support the idea of our chairwoman of the committee asking for a little more time to review something when half of her committee wasn't even present at the meeting. I think as a matter of respect, you know, that if she's asking for more time, I would support that. But I just wanted to comment on that and then ask for a roll call on two others. May I do that at this time or not?
We're still discussing Resolution 38.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I was at that committee, and I've also looked into it, and this is, I kind of brought this up of, there has been some interest in buying the building now, and one of, I think, the problems is nobody really knew what the environmental part of it was and the depth and what if we were going to go through or you know what the demolitions were going to cost because of all the environmental stuff, and it's why we went with that process, because you know I've been driving past that building for eons, and right, it has been an eyesore, and I'd like to see it down. But then otherwise too is that there were some interested parties that were looking into it, and my whole idea was with the whole process of taking this over and in a foreclosure now because we didn't do it in the past because we didn't have the figures we needed. This is going to take time to do it, and that contractor is holding it for 6 months. I'm not asking today or to deny demoing it, but if we do have some interested parties of coming in, you know, I'm not saying set it up as a public auction or however you do it to put it out there if there's anybody interested in that building, because really the core of the building is good, a new roof but with the steel and everything else that's in there. But if we have an opportunity to get rid of it before we have to spend money to demo it, then why wouldn't the county look into that savings for everybody? And because that goes back to the taxpayers and what we're all here about. And that's the only reason that I said if we have an opportunity to save the county some money, but if it doesn't happen by the time it has to go to, and I know John wants it down, or Supervisor Stroud wants it down, and you know, and then put it back on the market or whatever we have to do. But if we have an opportunity to put it back on the tax maps, all right, and not have to spend any money taking it down, that's, I think, the direction that we support. And I think that's what you were trying to say in your, with your amendment, so.
Supervisor Wild.
He was looking at Supervisor Diamond, though. I thought maybe it was my glasses.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Is there anything in this resolution that says we cannot sell it? Does it need to be specifically called out, or all it's doing is calling out that we were going to demolish the building?
I think that's what Supervisor Sieber was speaking to, that this resolution is about demolishing the building, but there's nothing in the resolution that commits us to what's next after the building is demolished. Can you put that in there? If you can suspend the rules, can you do it?
No, I guess the answer is no.
So then I don't see any reason for the amendment. We can still make that decision at a later date.
Until the
Thank you.
building's down. Once the building's down, that's that. Okay, I hear you.
Supervisor Bruno.
No, I'm good.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with a lot of my colleagues here today talking about it being an eyesore. I've dealt with those owners in the past in the city, but what I'd like to suggest is before we go and demolition this building, we get a structural engineer to come in and take a look at it, evaluate the building. Is parts of the building salvageable? And if that's the case, we put it on the market, we sell it, and we save the county costs associated with demolition. What we feel by driving by, or me going in there, walking around, I'm certainly not certified in structural designs and the integrity of the building. There may be areas in that building that are salvageable, and if that's the case, let's look at it, evaluate it, and mark it. Thank you.
Supervisor McDevitt.
Thank you very much. I think Supervisor Garrity pretty much said it all. We have a polluted, unsafe structure. Time to tear it down. Tear it down. We have a simple resolution in front of us. I drive by that building every day of my life. It is time to go. We have a bulldozer. All we got to do is start the engine, and the building goes. We've got an excellent bid from a contractor for demolition and for asbestos abatement. Let's go for it. Let's deal with the other issues after the building is down. And when the building is down, I suggest to you it will create a different outlook when it comes to someone potentially purchasing it. They will now see that piece of property in a different light. What they see now is old, it's corrupt, it's polluted. What they may see upon demolition is a piece of property that may or may not have some developmental possibility. So tear it down. Let's move on. We have a simple resolution in front of us. Let's vote on it.
Okay. Anyone else that hasn't spoken? Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. One of the reasons that people didn't buy it for so long is because there was the specter of environmental contamination. We have actually conducted testing that shows the property does not need any soil remediation. That is what DEC told us. We've had the testing done. People who want to buy the property can get those tests from us. We've done this in the past. We just got done selling the recycling building. I don't know why this is any different than that. That needed a new roof too, and we put it out to people to buy, and we got offers to buy it. The other reason people wouldn't buy this building is because there were hundreds of thousands of dollars of back taxes owed. Once we go through the foreclosure process, those will be wiped out. And finally, we do not have anything that says that this building is unsafe. The town has never condemned the building or determined that it's unsafe, and neither have we as the county. And there are people who are creative and see something other than just a nasty old building there. They could do something interesting with that building and revitalize our downtown. I would like to give our business people the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to vote no, even though I understand that this is a good bid. Maybe I'll bring it back to committee and see what else we can do with this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. just so that we're all clear, is there anything preventing the county foreclosing on this property as it is and putting it up for sale? As with building in place?
This resolution says that we shall enact a contract with the construction company.
Right, but my thinking on following this through the years was that with environmental hazard, in order for the county to take the property, we wanted to make sure that it was clean. We were not taking on a problem that would have a legacy to it. So what is it? Does this property have a clean bill of health where the county, under its policies, can just foreclose on it and put it out for sale without demolishing the building?
The foreclosure process is already moving along. The committee told us to do that. We'll have ownership of this property by May, I think. Right, May? This resolution, Warren County shall enter into an agreement with Bronze Contracting for demolition. This resolution is what would prevent us from putting it to market without demolishing the building.
And then if I may have a follow-up question on that,
Sure.
Was there a reason why we were going to the expense of demolishing it instead of just selling it as is?
The committee discussed selling it with the building on it, or the committee discussed selling it with the building on it, or selling it with the building demolished, and the committee decided that they would rather have the building demolished. That was the committee discussion. The video's all online.
Mr. Beatty.
Yeah, thank you. My primary concern and objective is that this piece stays on the public tax rolls. And one thing that I see in that resolution states, okay, we can demolish the building, we'll own it, but I know there's some people that want to turn it into a bike parking lot and that the county still owns it and so forth. And that takes it off the Queensbury tax rolls, the county tax rolls. That's a real concern of mine. So I hear what Ms. Bramer's saying, and I'm for the county and not owning this. On the other hand, is it more sellable without the building on it? And I see both sides of the story. But my objective is I don't want this to be another county piece of land and taken off the tax rolls. If that happens, then I think we do a huge disservice to all the taxpayers. So by the way, there's a bike parking lot a half a mile down that trail, half a mile away. So putting another bike parking lot owned by the county makes no sense to me at all.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, procedural related, to us foreclosing on this property. Does it require us to go to auction? And if so, does it kind of command us to take a bid of $1 to sell this?
We're foreclosing outside of the auction cycle, so with the idea that because the contractor is holding their price for 6 months, we wanted to take ownership of this parcel and be able to put it on the market prior to the October auction. The state law requires us to have a competitive process if we're going to sell or lease real property. So I think the answer to the question is when we take ownership of this property, it will be before we take ownership of the rest of the properties that are in the foreclosure auction process. And if we're going to sell it, it has to be to the highest competitive, the highest. What's the term? The legal term?
So let me just clarify what Ryan's saying. There's actually an exception under County Law Section 215 that if you take a property through the foreclosure process, you actually don't have to have a competitive bidding process on it.
Right,
it's actually exempt from 215.
Right.
So we can take it through the foreclosure and then the board can decide what they want to do with it after that. We do not have to have a competitive bidding process on it.
But the track that we're on right now, the committee asked us to get it outside of that process to get it done quicker. The track that we're on now is to have a competitive process to dispose of it.
So, if I may, I don't understand. Does it mean we still have to take it to auction eventually, or we can just hold on to it and sell it to the highest bidder if we chose to do that?
If we want to take it to auction, then it needs to be part of the regular foreclosure process. The committee told us not to do that. The committee told us to take it out of that process so that we could get it done quicker.
Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
I'm going to try a different tact here. At my committee meeting, I was missing 4 of my members. Chairman did the same thing to you. I'm sorry. Chairman Thomas had to sit in to make enough for a quorum that day, and we have not discussed over and over what we are going to do with this property. This was just the next step. Getting the bids was simply to understand what our potential liability would be. But now that we know what it is, it has a relatively clean bill of health. I think this needs to go back to committee, and I'm going to make a motion to table.
Okay, motion.
Resolution 38.
Motion to table Resolution 38, seconded by Supervisor Beatty. No discussion on a motion to table. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, would the people that are opposed raise their hand, please? Okay, I think that my judgment is it fails. So Resolution 38 is tabled.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just as a point of order, and perhaps I'm just looking for your guidance, Mr. Chairman, on this. When we have the public that watch, whether it be on video or whatever it's on now, when we raise hands, you can't tell who's voting what way.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, obviously that's your call on whether you do a roll call or not, but I just think for transparency purposes and for the public to know how their representatives vote, it's very difficult to tell with a roll call. I only know this from trying to get up to speed on last year.
Thank you. Yes, Supervisor McGowan, you have another resolution you'd like to discuss?
No, I just wanted to see if I could comment to the cameraman, see if you could quickly zoom all that stuff when it's going on. Thank you.
Supervisor Sieber?
Thank you. I was wondering if we could have a roll call on number 49 and 50. I was very vocal in Supervisor Dickinson's committee meetings on occupancy tax, but I feel that the Schedule A scoring system that we currently have in effect, that was, in my opinion, really modified. I don't believe that we went by the letter of the law in terms of the awards. I also think that OCTAX agreement should have been addressed during the 2019 year. And for those reasons and then other reasons, I would be voting no on 49 and 50 and would just respectfully request that roll call.
Okay. Roll call on 49 and 50. While we're here, any other roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I request a roll call on resolution number 40, please?
Number 40. Okay. That's a roll call on number 40. Mr. Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. 47 and 48, I'm going to vote no for. I don't want to necessarily put the board through another roll call for those, but I just wanted to make sure that I get recognized for voting no on those.
Okay. You'd have to vote no against the collective, all
the resolutions.
What was that one?
So can we just do a collective roll call on the 47, 48, 49, and 50?
No, they're all different. I'm not doing that.
So,
with objection.
I'd like a roll call on all of those, please, Mr. Chairman, because I want to vote no.
Then ask for a roll call.
Roll call on 47 and 48.
Yes.
49 and 50 are... Any other roll calls? Okay, let's see. Here's...
I would like to make a comment.
Okay. Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On resolution number 41 about the community health assessment, community health improvement plan, want to commend the people that put this together. It's great information, and it really shows where our county fits within the region. What I found disturbing is our high incidence mental health problems here, and as well as chronic health, and those are the two priorities that they're taking action on. Just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. Thank you. Just further discussion on any resolutions? Yes, Mr. Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. 47, 48, 49, and 50. They're all related to occupancy tax. I'm not going to single one out versus another. But last month, you challenged me to help figure out what our long-term strategy is for economic development. Tourism is a big part of our economy. And occupancy tax happens to be, let's call it the gas, that fuels the engine of tourism. We need to take a closer look at how this money is being spent, what our return on investment is, and how that's really moving us forward with increasing our tourism and maintaining our tourism. Until that time that we get an opportunity to go through this and talk about the metrics in terms of how we measure our return from occupancy tax, I can't support any additional expenditures. I do know that there's some valid expenditures here. There's some great things that this money does currently today, but I really want to see if we can get the board to take a look at some longer-term planning in terms of where we go. Our treasurer has already mentioned to us that this may not be sustainable in terms of some of the money that we've committed to in the future. So I just implore you to let's get together and talk about where we're going with this $4 million plus a year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, relating to those four resolutions?
47, 40, yes. 8 on the OCC tax. I also have concerns. I thought that we were going to have a working group meeting, and I don't believe that happened, or if it did, I wasn't invited. And I wanted to hear more about how we were going to make a sustainable plan for the expenditure of occupancy tax funding. So I'm uncomfortable voting yes for those. Thank you.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Resolution 47, I believe that the coalition came to the county board with an annual report that indicated the value as a result of the contributions from the county towards the pool arena. I suggest those supervisors that would like to have any questions about whether they're performing at a level that they feel they should be, take a look at that report.
Any other comments on 47, 48, 49, and 50? Okay, discussion is closed on that. Any other further resolutions for discussion? Okay, privilege of the floor to talk about resolutions that are before us. Okay. The clerk informs me that Supervisor Beatty asked that he wanted to vote no, I believe, on number 74, and he forgot to...
Did we already vote on 74?
No, but...
I mean...
Do you want to vote?
Do you want...
Oh, okay. No, we don't need to have a roll call. I'll just...
Okay. Just trying to help.
Oh, that's right, because I'll have to vote for it. That's okay.
No, we're on to public comment.
So we won't have a roll call on 74?
No. Well, it was after public comment.
Okay. We'll go back to that.
Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Yeah, I'm Christopher Lynch. I've been up here since the 50s, been watching all this stuff, especially Bay Road. I grew up around the corner on Grove Avenue, went there, been going by there as long as anybody here. Very quickly, I love Supervisor Bramer's presentation. It's the most cogent thing I've heard all day. If you drop a building, that's it. How many buildings in this area have you seen where there's some government body said, oh, this is terrible, get rid of it, and somebody turned around and turned it into a beautiful building? The whole area is littered with. How many of the new growth things, you know, convenience stores and welfare homes and things like that. Have you seen that actually added anything to the community? You know, you drop the building, that's done. Listen, anybody who's going to buy the darn thing will take into account the cost of dropping it. We found out there's no asbestos abatement. Boom. I love the idea of just passing this along, give it a month or two, and just put it out there. And whoever, if it's $1, it's $1. But look at all the good buildings out there. I personally think that's a beautiful building. That's just me. I'm probably wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Norm Dasher. I'm CEO of the Hyde Collection, and I just wanted to briefly tell you with a portion of the occupancy tax funds we received last year, we worked with a Warren County-based web consultant to change our website. And since those changes have been put into effect, we've had really good success. We've had 14% more overall traffic on our website, a 22% increase in page views, a 41% increase in mobile traffic, a 77% reduction in load speed. It's gone from 9.7 seconds down to 2.2 seconds. And these are scores according to Google Performance Metrics. We now have a score of A. We've had 105% more traffic to the visitor page, a 302% increase to our donation page, 45% more overall traffic, and a 30% lower bounce rate, which means people aren't going to the website and bouncing off it. They're staying on our website. So I want to tell you it was a good investment. I want to thank you for that investment. Our strategy for the Hyde for the next year and the next 3 years, it's a 3-phase growth strategy. First, a regional growth strategy. The second phase of that is New England, and the third phase is national. And when I say national, this year alone we've had visitors from 42 different states come to the Hyde Collection. So we're focused on expanding the footprint to not only have a regional but also a national reputation. And again, we appreciate the investment of Warren County with the occupancy tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I do believe Supervisor Sieber has a roll call request.
I apologize. I guess I missed that when I commented earlier to actually formally request it. So may I please request a roll call on 74?
I'm trying to keep things...
I understand. I'm sorry. I thought I did that. Thank you.
74. Alrighty. There's no other discussion. Vote on resolutions.
Okay, Resolution 28, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Sieber,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer? Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yep.
Mr. Merlino? Not here. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes,
yes.
Vote for him.
Yes.
We've been here too. Sorry
Something
about
must
that.
be here, right?
Was that a yes or a yes?
Yeah. Giving him Gene. Resolution 29, amending Warren County budget for 2019 and 20. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Sieber,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 40, appointing members of the Professional Advisory Committee. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Sieber,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Abstain or recruits.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Pick one.
Mr. Simpson?
Yeah.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 47, authorizing Warren County Tourist and Convention Development Agreement. Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Sieber,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 48, authorizing continuation of an intermunicipal agreement with the Village of Lake George. Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 49, authorizing agreements with certain applicants for disbursement of 2020 tax revenues. Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Abstain.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Chairman Thomas?
Really?
Really?
Yes.
Resolution 50, approving the 2020 OCTAC spending plan. Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution number 70, amending the table of organization. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Sorry, Amanda. Number 70.
Number 7, amending the table of organization.
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover? Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 74, authorizing license agreement with Revolution Rail. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Ms. Shepler?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 80, establishing capital project H399 Airport Snow Sweeper. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 81, authorizing appropriation of funds from Airport Repair Projects Reserve Fund. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 82, home rule request by Warren County for an extension to the law authorizing the County of Warren to impose an additional mortgage recording tax. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 84, establishing budget code A917, assigned fund balance SUNY Adirondack operations. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 85, authorizing appropriation of funds from the Computer Reserve Fund. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 86, authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenues to the OFA budget. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 88, authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenue Gaslight Village parking fees. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 90, authorizing appropriation of funds from general fund unappropriated surplus to the sheriff's budget. Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett? Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes. Collective vote on the remaining resolutions.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by,
Do we need a motion?
I don't think we do. We just need to say yes or no. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, privilege of the floor. Yes, Mr. Whitehead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent a couple hours preparing for this meeting, and I'd like to give you the benefit in a couple of minutes of what I found about the rules of the board, some of which you've discussed earlier, none of which was very clear. I started this off with a FOIL request. What I did is I asked for every written rule that applies to powers that have been delegated to the chairman. And I got that as a FOIL request, and I had that returned to me some weeks ago. I read through it. I can tell you that despite what many of you believe, I can find nothing that says that the chairman has the power to appoint anything beyond the individuals in the committees. So that'll need to be looked at. I also found something very interesting. I looked up the oath of office from my appointment, and I believe it's the same for all the appointments. And the appointment never expires. So what it says is it's at the pleasure of the appointing authority, which is this board. And since my name never even appeared on that resolution in January, this appointing authority never took me off of that board. It's fortunate. What you did in January was you appointed a sixth person to the board, and you're only allowed to appoint 5. So it's really fortunate that one of you has, one of the 6 of us, has decided to resign, because now it's down to 5. It's my intention to start sitting on that board again next time they meet in about a month, unless I'm so directed by the appointing authority not to do so. There are some other things. I'll point out some of these things, and this will be for the benefit of Mary as well, as I'm sure she'll be checking into this. But resolution number 1 has a lot of the rules, and number 7 says filling of existing vacant positions. Only be authorized with the following approvals: county administrator, budget officer, and majority vote of appropriate oversight committee. When I was appointed in 2018, it was done at the Personnel and Higher Education Committee on October 4th. That's chaired by Mr. Garrity. The minutes here for that meeting say, moving along, Mr. Garrity advised Agenda Item 7 concerned a request to appoint G. Travis Whitehead to fill Warren County's vacant position on the Warren, Washington County IDA and CDC due to the resignation of Luke Tessier. Motion was made by Mr. McDevitt, seconded by Mr. Garrity, and carried unanimously to approve the request as outlined above. The necessary resolution was authorized for the October 19th board meeting. So, I mean, you have done it properly in the past. There's no need to go through committee for people that you've already appointed because their appointments do not expire. But if you have a vacancy, it seems clear to me that you should be going through there, and that's exactly what you did in this case. The idea that, you know, many things have been done in the past that may not have, doesn't make it right. If I got pulled over on the Northway later on today doing 80 miles an hour, and I was telling the cop that, you know, I normally do 100. I've been doing 100 forever. I don't think it's going to buy me anything with the cop or later on with the judge. It's a matter of what the rules are, and you know, Mary can tell you what the rules are and what the rules aren't. Good luck on finding something in the IDA bylaws. I've looked. The closest thing I can find is actually in the CDC bylaws, which were revised in 2012, and they just say that each county will appoint 5 members, same as the IDA. And that's as close as I can find to guidance on that point. So that's really all I have to say. As I said, just a couple of minutes. It took me a couple hours to find this. I do appreciate that there was a lot of discussion today on a lot of things, and I think you're making better decisions because of it, and I compliment you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Mark Westcott, Queensbury. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read the bylaws. It says nothing about how members are appointed. It's a relatively easy fix. I'm not an attorney, but you could just put in a provision that says all members shall be nominated and appointed in conformance with whatever it is they're nominated and appointed, whatever that conformance is. Very simple fix.
The county is not in a position to do that. These are the IDA's bylaws. The IDA has to adopt their own bylaws.
Well, she said she was going to look at the bylaws, look what they mean. I'm just making an overall suggestion.
Got it.
Okay? So I'll be saying the same thing at the next IDA meeting. Thanks, County Administrator. Next is that there's no provision on how you remove somebody from the IDA board. So I'll be making a recommendation to the IDA on that. I'll just save you the time. You don't really need to read them then, because they don't say anything about how members are appointed. And that could just be handled by recommending that the board member is removed for just cause. Before any member is recommended for removal, maybe you could contact them and sit down with them and talk to them about what they're doing wrong and why they should be removed. You know, might not be a bad idea. Pretty good rule of thumb anyways. Kind of golden rule stuff. None of us want to be removed, you know, without even knowing that we are. Number 3, I want to thank the IDA and the members here of the IDA. I think you're doing a good job. I've attended the last 2 meetings. I really appreciate that you now opened it up for public comment. I think that's helpful. In the one meeting, the first meeting I attended, you ended the meeting a little early, and for those of us that went out on a really bad night, it was a little disappointing. We went over there, and then thanks to Travis, pointed out that you couldn't go into executive session, but you decided to end the meeting. But the next meeting, you did not do that. You had an open session, and I think that that's real helpful to have people from the public be able to say what they think, because it can be very helpful for you. So thank you for opening up those meetings. Your discussion today about documents and getting them at the last minute, the 2 IDA meetings that I attended, this came up as an issue. In the December meeting, there was a representative that got on a telephone call from the WCC and made a commitment, and the board, based on good faith, moved forward with an action based on what that individual said. And if it wasn't for Rachel Sieber getting those meetings videotaped, there could have been real issue with that, but it was clear as day because it was videotaped. And that was really good that these meetings are open and public is involved in their videotape, because it, you know, when decisions are made, they're chronicled. But in the last meeting, I talked to Supervisor Wild about this before the meeting. A decision was made, and Mr. Wild made reference to not having the material before the meeting. He thought that was an issue, and he was right, because ultimately we heard what the members of the board heard what they needed to hear, and they decided to vote, but they didn't have the actual lease that's involved with that decision. They took it on good faith that the lease would be the right type of lease, and since that time Travis and I have read it, and it's not. It's a lot of issues with that lease. And this is a perfect case in point of not getting the material. I want to thank Supervisor Wild for bringing that to the board's attention. And I just use it as an example of why some of these other supervisors said to you, you know, we really should see the documents and have some time to read them before we vote on them. I want to conclude with why taking Travis off the board like you did was a bad idea. One, it's just nobody wants to be treated that way. Nobody. It's kind of golden rule stuff, and I would think that everybody in this room wants to live by the golden rule. But it also sends a message to other board members, committee members, staff, that if you question, you challenge, yeah, you identify something that's wrong, you know, you might be treated in the same way. And I don't think that's good for any of us. You want your people to be able to come forward and say, listen, there's something here that's not right, and they should be supported for that. And hopefully you'll take action to fix it. My final comment is about Mr. Stevenson. Sounds like a great guy. I think he'll probably be a great member of the board. And I would just add that I think you need more business people on that board. I'd take some of the supervisors off and put some more business people on. So I'm sure you'll get or the IDA will get their bylaws in shape. You'll make the right steps and move forward positively and continue to do the good work of the IDA. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Hello again. Still Chris Lynch,
Right.
Queensbury.
All right.
I was sitting here at 4:30 this morning reading the Resolution 1 and then 1968 resolution that it gave the supervisors their powers, which I have here. There's absolutely no place in there where I see a supervisor having the authority to just willy-nilly appoint this person or that person or the other. It's just not there. I'll repeat what Mr. Whitehead said. It's paragraph D7, Resolution 1. Filling of existing vacant positions, blah, 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 parentheses, will only be authorized with the following approvals: County Administrator, Budget Officer, and majority vote of the appropriate Oversight Committee. Now, in a world of alphabet soup spending all our tax dollars, I believe the appointing authority for IDA members is sitting in this room right now. And we're talking about what IDA says or doesn't say or whatever. I believe that's the tail wagging the dog. I'm here for 3 reasons. 1, 50 years of watching local politics, I rarely see where last-minute resolutions and this, that, and the other thing accrue to the public benefit. Usually there's something else going on. Usually. I don't know that much. Second reason I'm here, I've had a bee in my bonnet ever since Mr. Whitehead got fired off of the IDA. I think that's a travesty. Anybody who cares about the average taxpayer or integrity in government, there's absolutely no way of justifying this. The third reason I'm here is I am so frustrated with IDAs and everybody else like that. I'm looking at Fort Edward and 15 different WWHBCDEFs, you know, and they're sluicing money out of people who are making $10, $12, $14 an hour, giving it to people who are flying $50 million jets, and we don't even know what's going on. And a lot of times, I wonder how many of the people voting on these resolutions know what's going on. You know, the idea that we just flop something, oh, here's an IDA member. Oops, 2 rounds late notice, but who cares? What the heck is the reason of a personnel committee if not to vet personnel, to interview, to advertise to get the best person available? And I just, again, the idea of just flipping this out the day before and la, doesn't matter. These people are spending tens of millions to equate the Youth Commission to the IDA. I didn't know the Youth Commission was passing tens of millions of dollars. That's expensive children. So I am tickled that this has gone back to a personnel committee. For 30 years, I had anywhere from 30 to 60 employees. I have a fairly good record, and I might just show up at the next personnel committee meeting and put my name in the hat. Thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Announcements. Mr. Dickinson.
I hesitate to do this, but I'm going to do it. I've listened to everybody else, not even listen to me. Town of Lake George owns a building on Old Post Road. It's looks like a residential home. It's actually the offices of the Village of Lake George. The town owns it, and they provide it to the village. Across the road is the Taj Mahal Town Hall. Recently, I had one of my multitudinous meetings with the mayor and the village. So I did the Jack Benny shuffle across the road from the town office to the village office. And we were meeting with a portion of the fire company. So I'm in the village office. We're talking about the fire company. There's about 5 or 6 of us in there, mostly fire people. And a few minutes into the meeting, all of the fire company people light up as their pagers go off. John Earl has been in the fire department for 100 years, turns to me and says, "The town hall's on fire." So I get up, I go over and I pull the shades open on the village office, and I'm looking down at the town office. Now, I don't see any smoke, I don't see any flames, nothing. But now the siren is going off, and the firehouse is a block away. A block away. Guess who showed up? Warrensburg. Warrensburg Fire Department was there like in no time. Came to our rescue, saved the building, nobody was injured. Our own fire company never showed up. What they had of them there stood in the village windows looking out to see what was going on. So I'm going to take this opportunity, this little anecdote, to thank the Warrensburg Fire Department. We've always had a wonderful relationship with them. They do service our northern district and do a great job, and we really appreciate you covering for us in our southern district when we're unable to do it ourselves. Thank you, Kevin. Let the fire department know that people like George are really pleased. If nobody has anything else, I make a motion to adjourn.
Was it really our announcement?
No, I have an announcement.
Okay. Address the board, please. Yes.
Are you speaking to me?
I am.
Okay. I'm
Super-
sorry, I didn't...
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman Conover. Listen, we all have differences of opinion, and I love the healthy dialogue we get to have. And in part, we have a great relationship with the Washington County Board of Supervisors, too. But one time out of the year, I'm always a little disappointed that we as a board can't come together and, work on teamwork. So I'm making an offer out to all of you. Supervisor Bramer and prior Supervisor Matt McDonald played along a few years ago with the SUNY Adirondack Trivia Night. this is something we personally donate to and join in as a team. I would love to have enough members from the board, just like Washington County does, than to have to ask members from the community, because I think it's something that Chairman Thomas mentioned tonight about how often we should be talking about SUNY Adirondack. And we've got the Chairman, Supervisor Wiles, of the College Committee that I am sure has lots of known trivia facts. But here's my offer. I have the registration sheet. We need 6 members. 3 years ago, Washington County stole our hats because we lost. I recovered 1. The rest of them sit in the chairman's office in Washington County. And I may have been a little optimistic, but I have called out Bob Henke and Dave O'Brien, or Mr. Supervisor O'Brien and Supervisor Henke, on the fact that I think we can hold our own and perhaps beat them. There's lots of teams, and you know, I took the time to make some nice mugs for the 5 or 6 people that want to sign up. I'll give you a nice mug with a great little thing that says Warren County Strong, Team Warren County, and you can help me get our hats back. So just please consider, for a good cause and raising awareness about SUNY Adirondack, to join the trivia team. And just let Washington County know that we are going to hold our own, please.
What's the date of it?
Oh, yes, thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor Bruno. Is that who asked? Good call. The date is a Friday night. Can you imagine anything more fun than spending it with your fellow board members?
Yeah, right.
Friday, March 20th. And a personal donation of $50 for our table. And I'm not going to, you know, the mug's my gift. So can we just get our hats back? But it would be super fun. If you're interested, please let me know. And Team Warren County can be represented by our board.
Thank you.
I hope you join us, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Scheffler.
Public announcement, please, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
The town of Thurman is holding its annual Jack-Wax party on Saturday, the 14th of March, from 3 o'clock until the last person is served. We hope you join us. The proceeds of this are going directly to the American Cancer Society. This has been ongoing for many, many decades. Something that started years ago, and we're quite proud to have it back up and running again. So if you'd like to join us, we'd like to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let everybody know that tomorrow we're going to have the North Warren Chamber going to have their crazy downhill derby, which is an incredible amount of fun. Craig, I'm sure you're going to be there, Supervisor Leggett. And it's a great event. I don't know how many sleds. Do you know how many sleds?
No, I don't. Got one in the basement ready to go, though.
But in the same vein that Supervisor Sieber is inviting people to participate, maybe next year we should have team sleds here, you know, maybe some town competition, you know, and I think that would be a great event. Build a sled, enter in, enjoy our community. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Motion to adjourn. Moved by Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Beatty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.